Welcome to the Purpose and Profit Club podcast for nonprofit leaders, mission-driven creatives, and social entrepreneurs. Get ready to stop dreaming and start doing. Here, ideas become action. We prioritize purpose and profit. You ready? Let's go. Welcome, Sean Kosofsky, to the podcast. We've got the nonprofit fixer in the house. I'm so happy to see you. So we're going to dig into boards today. We're going to dig into all things boards. And that's one of the things sometimes people will come to me and say, how do I get my board to fundraise? How do I get my board more engaged? And also just like, let's go ahead and set the baseline of those questions having some frustration with their boards. So I'm going to start off by let's let you introduce yourself and your work, and then we're going to dig into all of my board questions.
Excellent. Yeah. Sean Kosofsky, originally from Detroit. I've lived in a bunch of places, Raleigh, San Francisco, New York. Now I'm in New York. It's like where I call home now. And I've been working in nonprofits for a little over 30 years and a wide range of issues, LGBTQ issues, choice, climate change, voting rights, bullying prevention, youth safety, lots of different things. And I've done every kind of role in a nonprofit: communications, direct service, fundraising, management, operations, all of it. So about 6 years ago, I started my own consulting business called Mind the Gap Consulting. We recently have changed names to just the Nonprofit Fixer, which matches my moniker. And I'm really a generalist in some ways, but I focus in three areas: fundraising, boards, and executive director training and coaching. And so I think not a lot of folks are providing that kind of support for executive directors. But that's a little bit about me, and I love talking about all things boards.
Perfect. All right. So the first big question to set the tone is, should all board members fundraise? What are your thoughts?
Yes. If you are the board of a public charity, which is the vast majority of nonprofits, not a private foundation, if you're on the board of a public charity, you should be fundraising. Now, there are exceptions to this. If the whole point of your nonprofit is that the whole organization is poor or immigrants or completely resource strapped, or you're just forming an organization because you're surviving a crisis, right? There are situations. Or if you are the family of someone who passed away. Like I was part of an organization whose son had died, and they started a foundation, a public charity around that. And everyone just said the family is doing this wonderful thing. We shouldn't expect them to have to fundraise also. There are exceptions, but 90% of the time, 99% of the board members should be there for the resourcing of the budget. When a board passes a budget, they can't just be there for the spending of the money. They have to be there for the raising of the money. And it's part of their duty of care. Part of every state law in the United States says that board members own the nonprofit, and all owners of all nonprofits are responsible for revenue. All owners of all corporations are responsible for revenue. And that means when you pass that budget, you have to be there to resource that budget and pay your bills. It's actually against the law to not. So most board members don't get in trouble for that, but it's part of our collective responsibility. And you can't compensate board members if you are fundraising also. It'll look like a conflict of interest. So it's a really tricky thing, but you are volunteers and you have to fundraise. I know it's a lot, but that's what you get when you're asked to own a corporation.
Listen, I love it. I wasn't sure what you would say to that. So that's a fun way to start. And we will dig into, okay, I hear you and I want my board to fundraise, but how do we get them to do that? We're going to talk about today. The next question that I just want to set in the stage is, should all board members donate? Should they all be donors?
I am a huge believer that in order to have skin in the game, which is an overused expression, but still totally right on. In order to have skin in the game, I think that a financial commitment should be made by every single person. I've been in every kind of organization, again, tragedy, small, scrappy, whatever. But if you are going to be put in a role of governing, you need to be invested. This could be $25. This can be $5. I believe every board member needs to give something, quote unquote, meaningful to them. That if you are on the board of an organization, it might even be the charity you give the most money to all year, right? So unless it's really well resourced or it's a short-term project, I think everyone should be giving. There are funders who are going to ask you whether your board has donated, and you don't want to be caught in that situation having to explain it. So 100% board participation. You can even count in-kind support for this, but everyone needs to be giving something. For most public charities. Totally. I agree.
I love that you also had the distinction and set the stage of your most meaningful gift is going to be different depending on your income and other factors. So everyone can give. Not everyone has to give the same 5-figure gift, right? We're giving at different levels. Okay. Before we go into board engagement, I want to talk about whether it's a newer organization or just an organization going through what I would say is like a season of transition. How do they find these ideal board members? How do they find great board members? That's something that people will come to me with. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Hello, nonprofit fixer, help. So how do they find good board members?
This is the one thing that I love to help fix.
Okay,
so
cool.
This isn't rocket science. I think for a long time, we settled for low standards. I just need 12 carbon-based mortals who will make 12 meetings a year and stay off my back. And those are the people I pick. And we tend to pick people that look like us, who are in our same community, people we just happen to interact with. And what happens is you get a lot of groupthink and you get a lot of loyalty to the person who brought them on the board. But in general, what happens is the low standards for boards ends up trickling out. We end up not holding boards to high standards. That is really bad. We only really need a couple things from our boards. Pass a budget, have good attendance, do due diligence, raise some money, and supervise the ED. This is not rocket science. It's about 3 to 5 hours a month. It's really not that much work. And I do believe that to find good board members, you aren't always going to find someone who's immediately ready for board leadership. You do need to train people. Mm-hmm. So the number one thing that board members complain about is they say they never got an orientation. So some of the times you might have a bad board member because they were never given an orientation. I don't know the culture here. Am I allowed to ask questions? I don't know our history. What are the programs? So you might find board members underperforming because you didn't onboard them correctly. But for those that are not performing well, you might want to coach them out, coach them into some other role, have them join a committee, have them join the advisory board, but move them into some other volunteer role. The owners of the corporation, the board, need to be excellent. They need to be stellar. So where do you find these people? I would say if you're willing to train them and develop them, but they have the right passion, if they have the right commitment, if they have told you up front, I'm willing to put in the time, I will answer your emails, executive director, I will do the reading before the board meetings, and I will attend meetings and raise money, you can train almost anyone. What you need are some fundamental ethics. You can't bring someone on who's there for self-dealing or for self-profit or just to put it on the resume. And all you need to do is show them the road. It's not rocket science. I train board members how to tell stories. Therefore, they're excellent fundraisers. I show them how to make meetings. We have some systems in place for communication. But I will say that you can look in your existing network. You can literally open up your contact list. Figure out the people that you're interacting with every single day. Oh, there's this really wonderful lady who works at the laundromat. You may not know that she's personally impacted by autism if you're running an autism organization. You may not know that she has a personal connection in her past to the environment. We make these assumptions that board members have to be rich or they have to kind of be familiar to us, but you really are surrounded by people in listservs and in your community every day that if you just walked over to them and said, here's the problem I'm working to solve, would you be interested in being a leader? You'd be surprised the rich network of people being willing to be asked and eager to be asked to help.
Oh, so good. Okay. So I'm hearing work your network. They're around you. You literally have to start looking, which I totally agree with. I also hear a flavor of you don't want this all the same type of person, whether that's socioeconomically, whether that's race, whether that's a lot of different things. So that's important. I would imagine you would agree that the people you serve should also have a seat at the board, maybe? Where do you fall there? Yeah.
Yeah, if that's a value for your organization being from the grassroots. Not all organizations are going to be like that. Sometimes your organization needs subject matter experts and PhDs and founders and technocrats. Sometimes your organization, especially if it's local or grassroots, you're going to want people from the community you serve. Some organizations say, we're not doing charity, we're doing advocacy. We're trying to change the law and change society. So we need people who can help us with huge, broad scale change. I was on the board of one organization that we made a decision that the way we're going to build our board is not just 12 rich people or 12 people that can make the meetings. We're going to find a board that will help us reach our mission, which means if we're trying to get this intervention into every single school in America, we're going to go ask the head of the AFT and the NEA, the big teacher unions, to join our board. They can get us into every classroom in America. And one of them agreed to join our board. So when you start methodically saying, Are we just here to build a board to raise money and do due diligence? Or are we going to build a board that will help us achieve our mission and shut us down and put us out of business? You will build a different kind of board. So you just set your laser focus on the ideal board, and you want a diverse based on geography, diverse based on race, and diverse based on skill set. And then you just kind of go and find some of these folks. But yeah, it'll depend on what organization and whether your stakeholders are going to hold you to a certain standard. Will it be obvious that you don't have people from the service population? Then you want those on the board. And you do need, if you want people, young people, or if you want people with disabilities on your board, just make accommodations so that you can have that representation.
So good. Okay, so we're going to move to the big question, which is really board engagement. So imagine an organization, they've been rocking and rolling for a while, and their board is very much stuck in the cycle of some people fundraise, some people don't, some people respond to emails, some people say they're going to do a thing, they never do the thing. The meetings have a lot of groupthink in them. What do we do? What do we do? I know I mentioned several different problems, but what are some, how do we start to help kind of turn that around?
Around meetings specifically?
Around the idea of like a disengaged board where there are a lot, maybe it's almost like 20% are doing 80% of the work, right? So how do we get the 80% engaged, whether it's at meetings, whether it's in between meetings, whether it's fundraising, doing the things they said, oh, we'll do that, and then they don't. Do you want to get your emails read and clicked? I've got something special for you. My brand new free guide, 10 winning email subject lines and 10 to ditch for good. I'll give you the secrets to create captivating subject lines that actually engage and inspire action. You want to do this before you launch your next campaign. Go to splendidcourses.com/10 to grab the free guide on me.
So I have a framework that I use in a course that we'll talk about later, which is like I break down 90% of board work into 3 M's. It's the members, the money, and the meetings, right? So the members are the human carbon-based creatures that are on the board. Like the people that make up your board are the members, right? And you have to recruit, retain, and remove those members throughout the year. The second part of it is the meetings. Boards don't operate without meetings. They gather, they call the meeting to order, they discuss and do due diligence, and they vote, and then they adjourn. Meetings are where boards shine. And then the third part of board service is the money. The money going in, the money going out, just monitoring that and passing a budget. And so of those 3 things, board engagement is consistently what everyone complains about. It is this weird structure we have in nonprofits. In corporate boards, people are paid. Nonprofit boards, they are not paid. You can get reimbursed for meetings. You can get reimbursed for expenses. You can even be paid for certain things, but you cannot be compensated simply for your board service. This weird structure has lent itself to boards that are distracted, over-involved, and generally checked out. And so the way to get board members to engage, I have found for me that a board agreement is the single most powerful tool you can use in an organization. And this is a mini contract. It's not legally binding. It's more like an MOU. When anyone joins the board, you use the board agreement to say, here's your job description. This, before you join our board, I'm going to be very clear about what's expected of you. No surprises. If you say yes to this, then there's no hurt feelings. If you don't honor this, you need to go. Right? So the board agreement is basically laying out what's expected of them. In that board agreement, they basically say, I'm going to avoid conflicts of interest. I will have strong board attendance. I will honor my give-get policy. I will raise money, and I will, do the due diligence and read the documents that are asked of me. In exchange, because it is an agreement, the organization needs to be transparent with the books. It needs to provide staff support to me when I need it, and it needs to give me insurance so I'm not sued for my votes. That's what a board agreement is. So it's a give and take. So if I ask a board member, here's your board agreement, right? Like, and every month you bring up during the board meeting, are we all in compliance with the board agreement? Are we all doing the things we said we're going to do? So part of the way you keep board members engaged is by having them sign an agreement. The beautiful part about this is that they self-select off. You don't have to have these difficult conversations about removing them when they're disengaged. They know they're not honoring the board agreement because you've brought it into the culture. It's brought up in every meeting. People know that they promised 4 things. Are they doing the 4 things or are they not? And so that is the way I believe to increase board agreement, is to hold them to high standards, which we talked about earlier, and get them to sign a document in front of their peers and turn it into the chair, promising that they're going to be a good player.
Now, can we introduce a board agreement to a board that exists right now here and doesn't have a board agreement, right? Can we introduce? Okay.
Absolutely. So most organizations that implement a board agreement don't do it on day one. They do it after the boards are already elected, and they're like half of them are in staggered terms. It could be in June. It could be in January. In general, every board member should sign it at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of their term. So if they have a 2-year term, I sign it every time I have a new term, or everyone just signs it fresh every calendar year. But you can implement it literally tomorrow. Have everyone just look at it and say, yep, these are all pretty basic terms, no conflicts of interest. I'm going to make the meetings. I'm going to read documents. I'm going to raise $2,000 a year. Sign. And then so it's so easy. And then bam, that's policy.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. So for everyone listening, they don't get to say it's too late because it's not the beginning of the year. It's too late because da, 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 da. They can introduce this in the next meeting. They can introduce this anytime.
In fact, faster is better.
Faster is better. And then when it hits January, then we can sign it again or something like that. Or
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I love that. So let's move into the idea of fundraising. So as you're thinking of boards specifically, are there some methods or strategies that you feel like when I'm trying to get a board to fundraise, these tend to work better for them and these tend to be a little bit more advanced, or I don't get a lot of buy-in? What are some like lower hanging fruit methods that you feel like work for boards?
So here, I think boards, one of the things we need to do is help boards meet them where they're at. The first thing boards need is training. Once board members get training on mindset and tactics, they're like, oh, I didn't yeah. I used to think that when I asked someone for money, I was asking for a favor. And I don't want to ask my friends for a favor. I'd rather ask strangers. Okay, well, if you ask your friends, you're going to hit your goal in like a day. If you ask strangers, you're going to have to ask 3 times as many, and you're probably not going to hit your goal. So let's just unpack this fear of asking our friends. You're not asking for a favor. You're doing them a favor by offering them an opportunity to save the world and change the world. You're just moving wealth from where it lives to where it changes lives. That's all fundraising is. It's from that bank account to this bank account. So once you unpack the mindset stuff around people's money issues and their fears, then people are like, okay, you know what? I'm actually feeling so empowered right now. I will go fundraise. So part of board fundraising is mindset, and then you show them the tactics. Now, to unpack the specific tactics that boards can use. My most popular tool that people request, and you can get it for free on my website, is my board fundraising worksheet. The board agreement alone begins the process of getting board members to commit. The board fundraising worksheet is a literal 2-page written plan that says, here are 10 ways you can go get your money. Now, you pick 3. So let's say you have to raise $2,000 a year or $10,000 a year. You literally, in a board meeting, either in person or live on Zoom, everyone fills it out, shows it up on the screen. There's like some group like norms and peer pressure and accountability that happens when everyone does it at the same time. Hey, everyone, at our February board meeting, we're all going to fill out the board fundraising worksheet. And Sally says, I'm going to do 2 Facebook fundraisers this year. I'm going to have 10 friends to my house, and I'm going to ask 13 friends for $50 each. And then and that's going to total $2,000. And everyone else does their own thing. But you give them a menu first instead of having them just make up stuff. But when you put it to paper, when you write a plan, when you give it a date, and you set a goal, you are far more likely to hit your goal. So if you put the board agreement, the training, and the board fundraising worksheet together, you're going to get huge traction toward getting your board to raise money. Those are just 3 of the tools. I also have a blog post I wrote called The Big List of Board Fundraising Tasks. And what it is over 100 tasks that board members can do that do not involve solicitation. I literally put together a list of over 100 things, compiling a list of foundations, calling newsrooms to pitch stories to get you guys into the press. There's like a number of things board members can do. And here's the key language. You don't just have to be soliciting. Part of a board member's job is to create the conditions for fundraising success. You are there to create the conditions. So tee up 6 meetings for me as the ED to come in and make the ask. If you just make introductions to people who know they're going to be solicited, that you have done way more than most board members. So you don't have to do the soliciting. You just have to create the conditions for fundraising success.
Oh, that's so good. I call that like a warm intro. Just give me a warm intro. Then put me in coach. Let the ED, let the director of development, let whoever take over, right? And that warm intro has so much value. But yeah, I think that idea is so good. And what I'm hearing is a couple of things. So I'm hearing we can inject the board agreement and then at any time. So we add that, then we add the layer of like, pick your 3 things. Pick your 3 things. There is something that happens behaviorally when you write it down, you claim it, you own it, you're doing it. So now I'm going to paint the picture that is also common. Can you, or what should you do? Let's say you've done these 2 things. Although when I say this is also common, they haven't done step 1 and 2. So we'll see where this goes. How do they have a hard conversation with a disengaged board member at the point where the board member says, you know what? And this has happened recently, thinking of one organization in particular, the board member says, I got you. You know, I'm doing a big outreach for you. I'm going to ask my friends and family to give $50 this month. I'm asking 50 people. And then they just don't. And the ED follows up and then they just don't. What's the next best step there?
You have to put, we tend to think, I'm assuming the person we're talking about here is like the chair or the executive director. We are not in this role because we want to be liked. We are in this role because we have to get results. Executive directors, managers, we are hired to get results, not to be liked. We have to figure out mission attainment. I am here to achieve the mission. I can't achieve the mission if I don't have resources. Board members saying, oh, I donate with my time. Well, when bills come, I can't pay them with your time. I need to pay them with cash. So everyone needs to raise money. So if a board member says and promises they're going to do something, you're going to start making expenditures based on that promise, right? So if a board member doesn't honor their promise, you're now in the hole. So that is an absolute abdication of their responsibility. And in a way, it's a little bit of malfeasance, not just laziness, it's malfeasance. Because we may have started spending stuff based on the fact that that money was going to be there. Not because some donor backed out, but a board member backed out, right? That is not acceptable. What you're doing, this is not some community garden. We're all doing work that's changing lives, right? So most of our nonprofits are not just little small community garden projects. They're really important things. And when you are asked to be the owner of a corporation, that comes with responsibility. So in the board agreement, there is a line in there that says, and I understand that if I do not honor my obligations, I will be approached by the chair and the ED about whether or not board service is right for me, right? So it's just really easy. You're not honoring your obligations. I think you know that. There's no hard feelings. It just means that this might not be the right role for you. How about we put you on a board committee, or we make you a volunteer, or make you on the board of advisors? There's plenty of other ways for you to participate, but we do need our board of trustees to actually be doing the things they said they did, or else it's going to trickle out to other bad morale and bad behavior. So if you're okay having difficult conversations, and that's part of the difficult part of leadership is engaging people, then you need to do this. But I think having the board agreement, having it really crystal clear when you join, please read this last paragraph. If you don't honor these things, we will come back to you and ask you if you can make room for someone who can do this. But there's language you can use to make those conversations so much easier with no hard feelings.
Oh, that's so good. And my big takeaway that you said from this too was it doesn't mean they're fired, dead, done, never to be seen and heard from again, right? It's not this charged, I'm mad at you. It's this might not be the right role for you, right? So I love that is this may not be mutually beneficial for them right now. It may be a time thing. It may be a overwhelm. It doesn't matter where else, but they may still have the desire to serve. So it's about approaching the conversation with that lens too. And the other thing that I'm really hearing is this really is like an internal cultural shift for each ED to make with their board. And this may be a way that they're leading with their board that they haven't before. Really saying, because what you said, I know a lot of people are listening and going, ooh, right? You said this is your responsibility. Like you had a lot of like, this is clear, this is firm. And the next piece is how in the world do we get this board agreement? Where is it in your course? Tell us about that. I want to make sure that we'll link to it in the notes, but this is inside one of your courses, right?
Yeah, the board agreement is for sale on my website. However, the best deal actually is to get all like 35 of the tools that I give away in this other course. I have a number of courses on my website, little mini courses, but the premium course, the doozy, the one that has everything in it is my Build a Rockstar board. I think we're going to give people a link to that. And if you sign up for the Build a Rockstar board, I have put all of my best stuff in there. There's like 4 to 5 hours of on-demand content, like little 10-minute sections. You can just go in and go to the lessons that you want to learn. This is everything from how you recruit, retain, and remove board members. And a lot of that module is based on the board agreement and how powerful it is and how it has saved my career in so many organizations. I call it the Swiss Army knife tool because it helps with recruitment. It helps maintain retainment for good board members, and it helps you remove board members or have them self-select off. It's just the most powerful document you can have. It is inside the Build a Rockstar board course too. I will say that in addition to that, you'll get some of the free documents I give away, but also I have infographics on get in your lane, like what each role of each person is and isn't. I also have sample scripts and committee structures and all of these things. But most importantly, in addition to the tools and the on-demand training, is that you get to join my Facebook group for a year. So I can answer all these questions for you live, not live necessarily at Facebook, but in real time. I'm usually in there answering questions for folks. So you can get that deeper level of support. But all of these great tools, including these documents in editable format, will come to you if you join the course.
Amazing. So this works perfectly into that last course question, which is, I know I hear it a lot. So I'm curious where you land specifically to boards and approving an expense. So I'll get an ED who's like, oh my gosh, I want to join your program. I want to do this. I want to do that. I have to get board approval. Where do you land on what the board should be approving for those types of support, continuing ed, consulting, coaching, whatever you want to call it, expenses?
This ranges based on the size and sophistication of the organization in general. The minute the board if you're a good executive director and a good chair, you construct a budget that basically has broad line items. Like, here's the line item for staffing. And then once the board passes that line item for staffing, I, as the ED, get to choose that staffing distribution. My salary, 5 people, 3 people, I get to decide all that. The board does not get into the minutia after they have approved. They can ask all the questions during the budget, and then once they vote, it's my decision. I would include in my budget a line item for the things I can pay for professional development. So every year you want to pass a line, $5,000, $20,000 for your whole team for professional development, and you get to decide how you allocate that. So some organizations, though, have limits, like anything over $5,000, you need to come back to the board for if it wasn't in the budget. In those situations, I generally think those tend to be smaller organizations. But if it's a really large thing, like an accelerator of 10K or 20K, you might want to go to your board for cover. That's a pretty big expenditure. But I do think that the board should just pass a budget and then let the staff run it. And then if there's any issues, you can ask questions throughout the year, but you have to trust your executive director's judgment on what are the most important uses of these funds during the year and the opportunities that come up, the deals, the offers that come up that you might not have if you miss it.
I totally agree. I think there is that oversight piece, and that makes a lot of sense. But I have literally had ED say to me, let me see if I can get this $200 spend approved. I'm like, that is a terrible use of everyone's time. It's a terrible use. Yeah. So that is another cultural shift that you can make in your board. If you are in that current dynamic, there is a way out of it. Right. And I would guess that maybe your board is also like, why am I looking at this on a Tuesday afternoon? Like, why do I go forth, spend it? I believe in you. I trust you. Yeah.
Part of this is training. We need to remind our boards and train our boards that their role is governance. The minute they hire an executive director, that person is doing implementation and execution. They are there to govern, to supervise. They are not there to pick out the color of the napkins at the gala. That is not what the board should be doing. In order to condition our boards for what their role is and to train them and educate them about what their proper role is, you should say to them, I don't want to be coming to you every time I have a $200 expenditure. Let's just take care of all of this right now. Obviously, if it's not in the budget, then you might have to come back to them but if you should try to go to your board and say, none of us want to waste our time and energy on these little minutia details. If you trust me, I wouldn't come to expend something that we couldn't afford. I'm going to stay within our budget. And encourage your board once a year to have a line item for things like professional development or things like travel. All these things should be in that budget. Give yourself some padding and some breathing room there. But yeah, having to constantly go back and forth for something as small as $200, it doesn't really help anyone. No one's happy in that situation. Boards that love those little decisions need to just back off and realize that the best use of their energy is to govern.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Is there anything else that you would like to share about nonprofit boards, whether it's from the ED side, from the board engagement side? What comes to mind that you'd like to give us?
I think that, some boards get a bad rap. I think that they really are I love boards because they are made up of we have 1.5 million nonprofits in this country, which means there's 10 million people that are serving on boards, if not 20 million people serving on boards in this country. That level of volunteerism really touches my heart. Being on a board can be the most thankless and certainly the least compensated forms of community service that you can possibly do. So I just want to throw a lot of affection and love at your listeners and people that are doing this who have been on boards. And it can be so thankless. So thank you for all the people that have never said thank you. But at the same time, we have to hold high standards to our board. So the number one thing is let's let go of this idea of minimal attendance, minimal work, giving of my time. No. See abundance, not scarcity. See all the things you can be doing to contribute. And there are ways to do it in just a few hours a month, but we need to be smart. I think that people should be engaging consultants, not because it serves me, but because I think organizations are stuck in a rut, and you can get out of that rut by engaging a professional. It really does. You can cut corner. You can, what do I say? You can get a shortcut without cutting corners, right? You can actually get to the front of the line because a consultant will give you a shortcut to what you're trying to do.
150% totally agree. So we ask every single guest on the podcast to share with us a thought that you like to think on purpose. So this could be a mantra, an affirmation, just something. Would you share your go-to thought for other change makers?
An on purpose thought. So I think one of the things that's been on my mind a lot lately is I do study a little bit of Buddhism, and I do have a mindfulness practice and a meditation practice. And one of the things I think about a lot and is sitting with me right now is that we are sometimes all of our suffering in this world, 90% of our suffering in this world is us resisting what's happening to us, right? It's not oh, there's this bad thing happening. It's it's actually my react. I don't want this thing to be happening, and therefore I'm resisting it. So much of our unhappiness, it's not the kid making a lot of noise. It's the fact that we are resisting the fact that this child is just being a child, right? So I think about this idea of how do I be more at peace? How do I slow down in my work and be appreciative of the moment I'm in? If you're a nonprofit leader, you are just spinning every plate and you are trying to do it all. And I really think if we could just sit down and just really think about our board is doing this horrible thing to us, or this funder didn't fund me, and just really just sit back and just have some gratitude and some joy. And instead of seeing everything as happening to you as this huge stressful thing, decide to engage the work with abundance, decide to engage it with joy, or else we're going to end up getting burned out. And we really do have more control over our joy in these organizations than we let ourselves believe.
Oh, so good. How can everyone find you, follow you? Where are you hanging out these days? LinkedIn, YouTube? Where are you? Where's your preferred platform?
Facebook is definitely where I hang out the most, but LinkedIn's also pretty big. And so that's there. But my website is nonprofitfixer.com. And that's where everyone can get all my resources and tools and trainings and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll link to the course, and we'll link to a couple of your freebies as well. This has been such a fun conversation. You got me from feeling a type of way about boards. I'm feeling more motivated. I'm feeling better. And I like that you just had a minute to honor the boards, because you're right. This work is some of the most thankless work. I'll never forget when I was voluntold that I was going to be on the event committee. That's hard. That's hard work for the auction. That was oh, this is hard. And we're doing this work. We're doing this work as a collective because we do want to see the world change. We do want to see our community better than we left it. And so it's instead of fighting against what is, coming together and grabbing that board agreement and getting some momentum around your board. I think everybody will leave much more motivated to make that happen. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Hey, high achiever. I know your sights are set on ambitious, world-changing goals. In the Purpose and Profit Club group coaching program, you can get the support, motivation, and strategy to accelerate your impact. I like to say it's where the inner work meets big impact and big funding. Go to splendidcourses.com/waitlist, and you will be first to be notified when we open up doors, and you'll get special bonuses when you join our waitlist. See you inside. think you've reached out to everyone in your network? Are you out of ideas to get noticed and get funded? I hear you. That's why I'm giving you a chance to steal my prospect list. Yes, you can generate leads for your nonprofit or impact-driven business. Grab my mini training and list delivered to your inbox instantly. Go to splendidcourses.com/prospect.